Been working here with Christian Kluge at the seminar in Germany. He's our German representative here for Wednesday night group in Chinatown JKD. And he'll be getting his associate instructorship here pretty soon. And we're really proud to be working with him because he really represents what we've been teaching. JKD is scientific simplicity and street fighting. It's a scientific methodology for winning a fight. So I started doing martial arts from books when I was 7 years old because I was a big fan of Bruce Lee. I started watching movies when I was little and I was fascinated. So I would get every book from the library on karate, kung fu, judo, and finally my dad signed me up in Jun Rhee's Taekwondo in Maryland. I was always looking for Bruce Lee, always reading books, always reading articles. And I was visiting my mom in 1990, and I bought Tim Tackett's book on Jeet Kune called Jun Fan Jeet Kune, the textbook. And in the cover was his address and phone number. And so I was just happened to be in California, and I was only 5 minutes from his house, just visiting. So I called him, and he said, yeah, sure, come on over. We have class every Wednesday. And this was before it was called the Wednesday night group. It just happened to be the only day he taught. And so I met him there, and that day Bob Bremer was there. And Bob Bremer I had never heard of because Bob Bremer wasn't really interested in teaching to this point. And so what we started with was sort of a Dan Inosanto curriculum, which was, which I loved. It was Muay Thai and Silat and Savat and Kali and all this. And Dennis Blue was teaching, but he was an assistant to Tim Tackett, and he was teaching. And we would do everything. And Bob Bremer became very central in our training. All of a sudden, he brought us back to the original stuff that Bruce Lee was teaching in the Chinatown School. And so it started because I was a fan of Bruce Lee and I wanted to just learn what he had. And then once I found Jeet Kune, I moved here from Virginia. I was only supposed to visit for a couple months, and I decided to stay. So the training we had at the Wednesday night group was a bit different than what I was used to in Taekwondo. It was very laid back to begin with. We didn't really line up and bow and all this as we came in, and it was a mixture of many things, and there was multiple teachers. It wasn't just one teacher teaching. Somebody would say, they remembered something from Bruce Lee, and they would, Tim would say, come on up and show us. And so after Bob Bremer had been there for a while, and he had been showing us the things that he felt nobody else was showing anymore. He was showing the leg obstruction and the hammer principle and things like that. Jim Sewell showed up and started hanging out on Wednesdays, and he's also a Bruce Lee student from the Chinatown era. And he had some cool drills that he remembered Bruce Lee showing. And with Dennis, he opened a school, and we had more of a regimented training where we worked out, and we started training to fight in Muay Thai, in the kickboxing ring and things like that. So we would have full Kali classes and full Muay Thai classes, and we would work Savat, and then we would have just JKD classes. And with those classes, we worked out quite a bit, and we worked on all the aspects that we could of getting in shape. One thing that Bob emphasized was that he said Bruce Lee wanted to always emphasize developing explosive power, striking power, right? And not just that, but in how we move our bodies. And so from the time I met Bob, we started working on really how to hit and how to move our bodies. And so with all the various teachers like Burt Poe, who was not a Bruce Lee student, but his fighting style was so direct that he would also show stuff. He was a Marine, and he was a Native American, and he would just show us killing stuff. He would just grab and show a break or something, or just something very simple. And then there was somebody by the name of Sonny Baigam, who was also very accomplished fighter, and he was a Navy SEAL, one of the first Navy SEALs actually, and he would just show stuff he had learned. And so it was a very interesting time in the early 90s because we'd have sometimes more teachers than students. We might have 10 students, or, and 10 teachers, or 5 students and 10 teachers. And there was also people coming like Eric Paulson to show grappling as he was learning, and the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and stuff. So in the 90s, it was a lot of experimentation and, a lot of training. We just trained as much as we could. So the way I teach is we start out with at the basic levels. We use a basic 1 through 4 level system for the non-teaching. Well, it's the beginning track, 4 being the most advanced, and we also have a senior level. And with Dennis and I are working on structuring things maybe slightly different with more levels. But as of right now, it's 1 through 4, but there would be like a 1, then a 1 senior, 2 senior. So there's 8, there would be 8 levels, so that you can divide up the learning. What I start with the beginners is of course, what is Jeet Kune? Which Jeet Kune in the name describes what it is. It's the way of the intercepting fist, and so they have to understand what intercepting is. Getting a basic stance and footwork is important. And then right away getting into the basic, the 5 methods of attack that Bruce Lee laid down in his notes and in his teachings. And so the students will go through progressively, starting with a single direct attack, which is learning just how to throw a punch, how to throw these various tools. And then after they get a few of those, we'll continue on to ABC, attack by combination. We start to put those together and so on. And then there's your angular attacks. And so the foundation is how to do these by themselves, start to put them together, and then after they don't have to get every technique down, but then so once they get a few that they can use, we will then move into the intercepting phase, where they're learning 4 corners and various things, because 4 corners is a key to JKD sparring. There is also a boxing emphasis for the defensive aspect when you don't have time to intercept, or when you are surprised, or just when you're tired. A guy throws a punch and your lead hand is too tired, so you catch, things like that, or you slip. And so we start working reaction drills, and reaction drills are so that it's not just about knowledge, but you're training the nervous system so that you can move in a certain way. So when somebody strikes you, it's not just, oh, I know what to do, but your body knows what to do, and you move automatically, You don't hit, it hits, as Bruce Lee would say. And so we go to, and the ultimate focus is sparring, but you can't just throw people into sparring without tools, because they will ultimately, without training, without the proper tools, will make the wrong choices. People close their eyes, they turn their heads. And so what you're trying to do is help them fight in an efficient way, using the Baijong stance, using the power side in front, and using directness, meaning straight line attacks to set up, and then the more broad or rear attacks to follow up. And so we use these levels, and then once you get past level 4, there's apprentice instructor, assistant instructor, associate instructor, full senior instructor, or senior full. And this may change in the future, but this is how we're doing it now. Lineage for instructor, I think, is important because it's about teaching. People should train with more than one instructor, I think, and learn from different people and get the biggest picture they can of Jeet Kune. But for an instructor, if you're working with somebody, you need to know that you're representing them well. Also, honestly, there's plenty of people out there that just did not train with Bruce Lee very long. They had a month or 2 or whatever, and then they say, well, I train with Bruce Lee, I'm going to use that to make myself famous. So, there's no law against them teaching, there's no law against them training people, but I think the proof is what you see is when we hit the pads, when we fight, when we spar, you see that. And it's not to say there's only one lineage that's good, but you will know that some are better than others. From Bob Bremer to Bruce Lee, there was a very heavy focus on explosive power, and you see that. And others you see more on movement and these fine motor skills, which I think is good as well. So, but if you lose the lineage, sometimes it's easy to just grab and pick, and if you don't understand Jeet Kune well, you can just be putting techniques together. So, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but with your direct connection to Bruce Lee, you at least understand, here's what he gave my instructor, and it was based on his body type, and then, you see other instructors, and you see, okay, well, he gave him this, and Bruce Lee trained each one differently. So I would say focus on what you can learn from each one of them. So with the Wednesday night group, we had a very important experience in the 1990s. I mean, it was a time that there was some major growth and major learning for us, and Dennis Blue and I are trying to restructure the group in a way that we can continue moving forward in the way that Tim Tackett, Bob Bremer, and Jim Sewell carried Jeet Kune to us from Bruce Lee and from the old Chinatown days. And we want to take those aspects and make sure that they're really carried on and that we don't lose them. At the same time, we're trying to make sure the quality doesn't disappear. So we're working on a way of testing and making sure that our curriculum is laid out in such a way where we can give people certification, and that we didn't really do that before. Certification wasn't a big deal to us back in the day because we just wanted to train and fight, and that's okay. But when people want to be instructors, you do need to have something laid out that says, here's what you need to learn if you're going to teach. And that's something that Dennis and I are working on together, and with some other people around the world, basically, to make this a successful venture and to make sure that our local instructors are involved, as well as those that have gained our confidence and showed to be loyal to the Wednesday night group over the years.